Hey everybody, Vivian here with an art journaling page I'd like to share with you. It's very much inspired by the huge plot of dirt we now have in our new home in San Jose. I've started a bunch of seedlings and they're all ready to go into the dirt. And it's been a very interesting experience trying to figure out placement and trying to understand the different personalities of all the little baby seedlings that I've got ready to go in the ground. Anyway, I think a lot of the thoughts that go through my head as I try to nurture this garden into existence are very applicable to life, so I thought I'd do an art journaling page about it. I use several products, including Faber-Castell Design Memory Craft Gelatos, Stampers Big Brush Pens, PITT Artist Pen in Black, and Gesso. I don't know if you're aware, but Faber-Castell has a number of different tubs coming available, including Gesso and I think Gel Medium, a couple of other things that I'm definitely going to have to pick up as soon as I can find them. And I also use a bunch of Sizzix dies, most of them nature-themed, to create a composition using a method that's actually quite liberating. So let's just get started with the tutorial. So I've been doing a lot of collage recently, ripping up pieces of beautiful pattern paper. These papers that I'm using today are a combination of papers from Kaisercraft and Prima. So I've been doing a lot of collage, just slapping things down and adhering them to the page or whatever project you're working on. I just recently made a card that was collaged. You can experiment with dripping, wrinkling, and altering your papers in a variety of ways, and adhering them to your art journaling page using your medium of choice. Any decoupage medium will be fine. Here, I've also cut out several die cuts. These are all Sizzix. There are some Fanciful Flight, I believe, bird wings and tattered florals and Gadget gears and this bird, which is actually what was left after I cut out the bird, so it's the negative space. The actual bird that was cut from this piece of paper was used in my last video, which you can catch at my station on YouTube. It's Contadina K. But I decided to use the negative space that was left over and just use my foam brush to adhere that down. The idea that I wanted to play with today was sort of randomly putting down these shapes and elements and then trying to find a path through all of those shapes. Using all of these random shapes with interesting patterns to create a composition that we envision after all the pieces have gone down. And once all of these pieces are down, I also put down some ripped up pieces of vintage book paper. So once that's all adhered down using your medium, you could speed up the drying process using a heat tool, or you could just go and get yourself a cup of Joe and take a little break and come back to a nice, clean, dry art journaling page. So this is Gesso from Faber-Castell. The Gesso is now available in a large tub, if I haven't mentioned that already. So I believe they've been sent out to vendors and they're widely available now. And as you can see, I just drew my hand through an area that looks like it would be interesting. A little path, abstract path that was created by the random application of shapes, die-cut shapes. And I'm adding a thin layer of gesso, a little bit thicker in some areas than in others, to, in one sense, unify all these varied patterns of our pattern papers. Once everything's dry, you can go over the entire surface using a sanding block. This one's medium grit, and what it's going to do is it's just going to rub off the very top ridges of the varied pieces of pattern papers that you've got on your art journaling page. And in addition, it's going to rub off some of the media that you've applied, making the raised edges that are being sanded more absorbent to further applications of media. So what I've been doing with a lot of my projects is applying media and sanding it off, applying more media and sanding it off, and going in that type of cycle to create a nice worn look in your projects and some modeling in your application of color, which is just about to happen. So I'm just wiping off some of the little stray pieces of paper that have come off, and here you can see what it looks like so far. So now that our surface is completely prepared, let me show you how it looks. You can see some of the papers have become almost translucent, so you can see all the different layers that you've created. Some of those die-cut pieces, like the gear shape, are showing through the thin book pages. Here I'm using a gelato in Pistachio. I think it kind of catches some of the green stripes in the Kaisercraft papers that I used. And I'm really rubbing it into all the nooks and crannies created by my die-cut shapes. I've already identified my path in the shapes and lines created by the die-cut shapes. So I'm keeping that in mind as I apply these colors. And now this is where the tactile addict that exists in all you mixed media enthusiasts gets its satisfaction. Really, I wet that surface with some spritzes of water, and I'm just really rubbing it into all of the little nooks and crannies. And then I have a baby wipe to wipe away some of the media on the very raised surfaces. That's up to you, depending on what kind of look you're going through. And when you add the gelato in onto a wet surface, it ends up becoming a much more intense color than if you were to go onto it dry. So we're going to do this with a couple of different colors. The next color that I used was Butterscotch, which is becoming one of my favorite gelato colors. It's like a yellow ochre, and it immediately lends a real earthiness to whatever project that I use it in. And I'm going to do the same thing with this gelato, mist it, and then rub it into all the nooks and crannies. The great thing about these gelatos with backgrounds and with projects like this is it's so easy to create continuity between different areas of your page just by blending the colors and creating something of a gradient. I'm applying a gelato in green tea over this central area. I've found that this layering of die-cut shapes, including the large gear shapes and the tiny detailed butterfly wings, created a really cool convergence of patterns and shapes. Much more concentrated here and diffuse as you move outward towards the edges of the page. So ultimately, I ended up wanting to create a lot of contrast right at that central point with dark darks and light lights. I used a metallic gelato last, and this one was called Gold Champagne, to add a little bit of shimmer in, well, more shimmer in a lot of places and a little shimmer all over that's very visible when you look at the page in sunlight. Once that dried, I added some work using the Stampers Big Brush pens, which have some beautiful, brilliant pigment. Just drawing on a silicone mat and then using one of these water brushes that you can get from Faber-Castell Design Memory Craft to pick up the pigment, and add that pigment into the little crevices created from the die cut shapes. So this was a permanent green olive PITT Artist Big Brush Pen in 167. So I did this with this green color. I also did this with the orange Glaze, which is a very brilliant orange. That's number 113. I actually did that in combination with a lighter yellow-orange called Dark Chrome Yellow, number 109. And interestingly enough, these are some of our secondary colors, which happened to work very well together, I think, in this project. And just getting those brilliant colors into the little crevices and using the water brush to blend them in a really natural way. I'm not too worried about getting the pigment onto the very raised surfaces because I'm going to treat those raised surfaces as a final step before I call this project finished. For my beautiful birdie, I used the Stampers Big Brush Pen in Scarlet Red, number 118. And finally, I went to the darkest color. I just used a Stampers Big Brush Pen in black, number 199, very sparingly to create my darkest darks. And here's what it looks like so far. Once that's dry, like I said before, I went in again with a sanding block with the intent of rubbing away some of the pigment on the very raised surfaces. I added in some journaling using a PITT Artist pen in black with a B tip. I guess the B stands for brush. This is a great pen to use when you've got a lot of media underneath and areas that might be a little bit slick or rough. Writing was very easy using this black pen, the B with the B nib. So as I said earlier, this page was very much inspired by the garden. Currently, I've got eggplants that have gone in. They are the variety Rossa Bianca, which are delicious and mild, and Costaludo tomatoes, which are delicious fresh, but very, very unattractive and irregular. And I've got a bunch of other seedlings. I've got some balloon flowers, some Shasta daisies, marigolds, Amy, which is Queen Anne's lace, and a bunch of other things. I've got so many that need to go into the ground before things start to warm up and stress out the seedlings. But it really requires vigilance. The tomatoes that are out there, the baby tomatoes and the baby eggplants, are constantly being attacked by critters. So it's just been a really interesting experience, and I'm very much thinking about placement and where different types of plants will thrive, and how when we place things poorly, no matter what we do, they will falter. And I wonder how much that is applicable to our lives as well. I used a Hampton Art woodblock stamp just to add a little bit more distress and emphasize that grungy look that I love so much. And I love painting with my fingers. I think I'm going to do more and more of it. I'm taking some of the Faber-Castell Design Memoricraft Gesso and just with a very light hand going over my surface with the gesso on my fingertip. I have some stills to share with you. This is the shot of the full page, and I have some detail shots to follow. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and you picked up a few tips or techniques that you might be able to incorporate into your own crafting. If you haven't got enough inspiration, you can visit me at my blog, which is actually reachable as a website now. So it's www.contadinak.com. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.